It is truly an honor to welcome all of you for the session on empowering Indian MSMEs to drive climate action. I welcome all our esteemed speakers to join us on stage for the session. I request Mr. Shikhar Jain, Executive Director, CII-ITC, Center of Excellence of Sustainable Development, to kindly moderate the session. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. And I think we have cut short the tea break, it seems, because the session is going to be quite informative. And I think in the previous session, you just saw, I think, the wonderful work the Skoda Volkswagen Group has done. And I think all the suppliers and dealers were recognized. This is almost the coming to the end last session as we are going along, and then there is a closing session after this. All of you had been with us yesterday, today. The main part of the theme of this 18th summit is strengthening global partnership for sustainable, equitable, and inclusive development. And this session is focusing on empowering Indian MSMEs to drive climate action. So there are two messages very clear which my panelists will be sort of sharing their experience and all. One is all about MSME, because from CI perspective, we always say that MSME contributes almost 40 to 45% of the total what they contribute towards the GDP from the manufacturing. And when it comes to CII, more than 70 to 80%, again, the membership is from MSME. So I think this is what the context of MSME is. But the second topic over here for the day is very important, that how do we empower our MSME for climate action? And I think that's the key thing, because the amount of support that MSME needs for climate action is this complete project that CII started almost an year back. And around COP26, those of you who are aware of UNFCCC, where we have the Conference of Parties. So in Conference of Parties 26, which was in Glasgow, it was felt that, and we are learning about global value chains and all, it was felt that it is very important that we need to engage MSME for climate action. And MSMEs need a lot of capacity building. How do we get aligned them with the OEMs? And I think that was the complete concept for this particular thing. And then we thought that what can encourage SMEs to come for this particular thing on climate action. We thought that let's try to have some very simple calculations of what we call as baseline, scope 1, scope 2. I don't want to go into the technical part of it. But when we started working with MSMEs, we realized that they know a little bit about energy calculations and all, but largely they are not aware of what is carbon, what is the impact of carbon on their businesses and all. And it was a challenge for us. And that's where we thought that best way to work with MSMEs is the cluster approach. And I think within our panelists today, while I introduce the panelists, let me give you brief also that each of these panelists that we have today in our session has a unique sort of work profile, I should say, and the experience which they are carrying with them. Dr. Tamal Sarkar, who is the Senior Advisor, Foundation of MSME Cluster, is, like I say to him, a veteran in the field of MSME. And they started this foundation, means he will brief about the foundation, but which was focused only on the MSME work. And I think this was something unique, and I think n number of clusters that they have worked on, and the amount of impact that they have brought on to the work, and I think they have been recognized worldwide for the work that the MSME Foundation is doing. So I will restrict myself. I will later on request him to introduce about the foundation and the work that they are doing, and also guide us that how we can also improve our program. Then to my far left is Mr. Anup Notial, who is the founder of Social Development for Communities, again a foundation which is called as SDC Foundation. Unique about Anup ji is that I got in touch with him when I was in Uttarakhand, and I found a lot of passion in him. And there are two things when you are working with the MSMEs. One, you need a passion, other, you need a patience. If you have passion, you can go and introduce the subject, but if you don't get the result, you need to have patience. So I know that Anupji is getting a bit impatient because he is not getting response, but I am saying that be patient. You will get the response, and we have just started a new cluster in Uttarakhand, Haridwar, and he helped us in starting up the cluster over there, and he will have his struggle part, I know. So that was the unique about him, but I will restrict about your foundation, which I will leave you to introduce, but a quite passionate person in this. Another to my right is Dr. Dinesh Gupta, and he is the president of one of the MSMEs, which is Shekhawati Impacts from Rajasthan. And when we were working in their cluster, we realized that each cluster has one or two industry which has to be the sort of the guys who have to lead the cluster. And here we found Mr. Dr. Gupta, who is also called as Bagman of India. If you Google search it, he's called as Bagman of India by Forbes magazine. The reason is that he started working on phase out of single-use plastic way back in 32 years, where he was saying that we should be only using cotton bags. And when we approached their cluster, their industry was foremost to lead this particular cluster on climate and whatever they could help us. So today I said that rather than speaking about your cluster, we would like to learn your passion almost 32 years back when people started thinking of it. And he is one of the largest producer of these bags and have been both nationally and internationally supplying it. So we have those examples where we can show to the world that even a small MSME, just with the passion, can do these things. And if you go into the complete life cycle, you will see that the cotton bags manufacturing will have a lower carbon footprint than any other form of packaging. So those are the things which will over time will also come. And to my far right is Mr. Hari. Uniqueness of Hari is a young, passionate person, again I say, startup, entrepreneur, and he took the challenge of two most difficult clusters, I should say, and very advanced cluster. And these are the clusters in Coimbatore and Tirupur. And we found that the 7 clusters that we took as our pilots, 2 clusters were in Rajasthan, 2 clusters were in Tamil Nadu, 3 clusters were in Madhya Pradesh. The representative from Madhya Pradesh is not here today, and I think we have missed him. But important about Coimbatore and Tirupur clusters was the knowledge part, because most of the clusters in Tirupur and Coimbatore were in the global supply chains, because you know that these are the textile hubs and all. So we saw that there was a huge difference. And I think towards the end of the panel discussion, we will be also releasing a report. And soon after the release of the report, we will be also uploading it. So those of you who are interested to see what are the datas, what are the reflections, what the study brought out was, and there is huge learnings that we have, that when you start a cluster on the climate action, might be there is a resistance, but then what pulls them to adopt these practices is what we have to learn as we go along. So I think this is where the context was. It's a challenging work, but then as CII, we thought that in the first year, which was the previous financial year, 22-23, we started with a handful of clusters, which were 7 clusters. We covered around 200 companies. This year we have the intent to start 8 clusters covering 300 industry. And we have a challenge that we have taken for ourselves is that by 2025, we need to have at least 1,500 SMEs which will come onto this cluster approach. And the limited part is that at least they have their baseline prepared, a very basic scope 1 and scope 2, those of you who understand a little bit on the climate action. And what is going to help them is the supply chains in which they are. Because when we talk to the big industries, which are the either in the manufacturing or the auto industry or the garment industry, where the parent of these clusters are, we see that they have a lot of problem identifying scope 3. So if MSME is able to prepare the baseline, go for scope 1, scope 2, by default the scope 3 part of the OEM or the parent company also gets taken place. So this is what we are attempting to do, and hopefully we would be successful, and we need more people to join, and you all as audience are also the brand ambassadors for us and taking this project further ahead. So with this as the context, may I now request each of my panelists, as I pose questions to them, to sort of throw some light, as I said, about their institution, what is the learning from the MSME, and how we can solve this sort of problem of climate change. Actually, in CII, cautiously we sort of have stopped using this word climate change because there is a huge realization that it's already changed. So what we need to do as corporate India or the corporate is we have to take action now. So from 2022, after the Glasgow, after India announced its net zero plan, we have started saying that let's do climate action. And this project itself is all of climate action with MSMEs. And other part is that CII has also introduced what is called as climate action charter. And we asked these companies to sign in this charter just as a voluntary approach so they know that they are committed to do something. So that's the very basics, very much the contextual part of it. So we now learn from Dr. Tamal Sarkar, who is the senior advisor for Foundation of MSME Cluster, and we call it as FMC. They have done a lot of MSME clusters in various topics. So what I want you to throw light is, because I was just sharing before this discussion with the panel that Tamal Sarkar is the sort of expert in it, and I myself had the opportunity to work directly with MSME Foundation with some clusters, I think almost 10-15 years back, I should say. And there is a complete methodology that they have worked. How do we train? How do we handhold the process? How do we develop the cluster? And then what are the outcomes? So what Dr. Sarkar, I will request you is that how FMC approach towards the cluster, and what are the right ways of doing the things, and what are the challenges, so that we can learn that. And if you can share also your experience and throw some light on the climate action, because we are seeing MSME, cluster, and climate action. So over to you, sir.
Hello. Thank you, Shikhar, for those kind words. And so I must thank CII for inviting me. And it is great to see the audience over here also, which shows that the importance of climate change is definitely increasing. Because generally, whenever I go to a two-day event, in the last day event, it becomes very fragile. But the full hall basically suggests the interest which people have, and especially with respect to the MSMEs, in a role of MSMEs in climate change. So to understand the role of MSMEs in climate change in India in particular, we need to understand the topography of the MSMEs. So approximately India has around 22 million manufacturing MSMEs. But out of that, approximately 16 to 17 million are household enterprises. So basically, we are left with around 5 million or 6 million manufacturing enterprises which are in the, you can say, in the factory sector. And it's not to say that the household enterprises can't contribute in this way. They can definitely. There are various ways, but the bulk of the thing comes to the other sector, the factory sector enterprises. So these 6 billion enterprises are into various types of products and distributed across around 1,500 MSME clusters all across the country. Now, if we look at the contribution of industry in the CO2e contribution, you will see that roughly around 30% is given to industry. But if we add to that the industry's usage of power and industry's usage of mobility, it goes down up to maybe even 50 to 55%. So that's a huge role that the country has to play. And as per latest data, I think there was in 2022 or 2020, it was approximately 2.5 billion tons of CO2 equivalent for the country as a whole. So if we take that as around 50%, that's a lot of CO2 equivalent that the factory sector has to work. You take away from that the power and the heavy industry, and then which contributes approximately 70% of that. So if you read with the 30% of the remaining, it comes to roughly around 300 million tons of CO2 equivalent, which the 6 million MSMEs are contributing. So that's the target that we have, that how to reduce 300 million tons of CO2 equivalent by the 6 million MSMEs of different sizes. I mean, they might be very small, they might be very big, and all those types of things. So that's the basic challenge. Now, when we started working on this thing, we found we worked in 3 types of industries here, basically. One is engineering, mostly foundry. Another is plastics. And the third one is, of course, textiles. So as you may be aware that 40% of Indian manufacturing industries are in the textile sector. So that's the biggest sector that we have in the country. So what we learned from them is that, you know, if an MSME, I will take away the first M away, and even the 7S, second S also away, because out of this 21 million, there are only 300,000 or 400,000 medium and small. So if you take them away also, you are left with almost the same numbers. And these enterprises which are maybe running with 10 to 30, basically employees on an average. Why I say 10 to 30? Because none of them have apprentices, because if you are more than 30, you need to have an apprentice. So, less than 10 to 30 people which we are working, they want to, if we want them to convert into this and contribute in this race, in this effort, I will say, then they have to be profitable. The bottom line is that if it is not profitable for them, they will not be interested. The second important thing is that it should be understandable. I mean, they should know that what they are doing, and it should be easily understood by them, what they are doing. So if we want to do these 2 things, then we have to simplify the areas of operation where they can contribute, and explain to them that by doing which are the 5-6 steps that they need to take, so that it becomes profitable, and also we become, it helps in the CO2, reducing the impact on the Mother Earth. So there are 3 problems in that thing which we find. That one is, of course, to simplify the procedure. The second is to demonstrate that, and sector-wise. So it is very important to become sectoral, and therefore the role of the clusters also become very important in that case. And the third important thing which we say is that they should feel that they are contributing. So how will an MSME feel that I'm contributing towards this cause? You know, that sort of a social responsibility. So there should be some mechanism to catch and bring to them that what is the contribution that they have made this year by doing certain steps in doing this thing. For example, a very important step, like in foundry, you will see that they use coke. Most of the foundries use coke. So when we worked in the foundry cluster, so many steps that we took. One simple step was that you should cover your coke, because otherwise in the night it catches the moisture, and in the morning it takes long time to burn itself. And that itself can reduce the impact on the, give an impact on the profitability. It's understandable by them, and it is also CO2 equivalent saving. So there are many such things. In textiles, if you go, in dyeing industry or any other industry, if you simply go over there, there are so many steps that you can take, simple motor change, or maybe, any other types, or maybe, say using, say, solar heaters. So if you use the solar heater to raise the temperature to around 80 degree, and the remaining can be done by the other things, you save energy, and it is a win-win for them. So the third thing which they need is that who will help them? Because the consultants who are around for the MSME they're very high cost. So, and the consultants need to be believable. See, MSMEs, many of the MSMEs or most of the MSMEs are working below the radar. I have seen clusters where there are 1,000 farms and none of them are registered. And they're working and they're contributing to CO2 equivalent. So if you want to convert them, so rather than penalizing them, how do we bring them into the mainframe? That is the target. So we have to have consultants which are affordable and who are believable that they can help them. So if we can take these 3 steps, like making it simple, understandable, making it profitable for them, give them consultants who are believable and who are very affordable type of consultants, and also give them a sense of ownership in the form that they are contributing to the cause of the CO2 equivalent. I think these 4 steps can greatly help the MSME sectors in contributing or cutting down on that 300 million tons by the 6 million enterprises.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. I think that was really helpful, and I think this sets the context very clearly. I think we had a good learning from you, and I think that's the way we took this clusters ahead. And I think this is the thing that they need to believe on you. The model should be win-win, and they should believe in it, that they will benefit something out of it. Otherwise, the complete game remains futile for them. What we do now is I just change the sort of quotes and go directly to you, Hari, because you have been there on the field, and I need to sort of you to reflect the challenges that you faced in both the Coimbatore and the Tirupur clusters, and what had been the learnings, means because you were the person on the field, and what Dr. Sarkar has just given us the insights. What had been your experience, and where do you see we are going ahead on it? So just share your experiences with us.
Sure. Thanks, Shikhar. Thanks for your very kind words during the introduction, and thanks CII for the opportunity and for putting up exemplary show. So I think I'll start off with some data. I think this data is what has been represented in the report that will be launched later. So when we worked with Coimbatore, we worked with 25 companies in Coimbatore and 25 companies in Tirupur, and within a span of a quarter, we measured what are their awareness when it comes to taking climate action and kind of assessing their vulnerability and to climate risks, and then what are they currently doing, the programs and initiatives in terms of taking climate action, and then leading up into the commitments to net zero and all of that. So I'd probably keep it into these 3 blocks, and like Mr. Tamal had said, he was putting it out very clearly. I'll just back it up with a bit of data and from the on-ground experience that we said. I think whatever he told was something very similar to what we had experienced on ground. The number of companies, the percentage of companies that were aware about what climate change is affecting their business and them being also aware that their operations have a lot of carbon emissions. We're close to 56% of companies, while the rest of the companies weren't even aware that they are contributing a lot towards climate change, or that their operations have carbon emissions and all that. So that's a huge awareness that needs to be built in terms of for the employee who's working on the shop floor, for that individual to understand why should we do an energy efficiency program, or why it is important for them to conserve energy, because they need to understand the impact and the magnitude of their performance having an impact on the overall picture of carbon emissions and all of that, right? So I think there was a huge lack in terms of that, and when that translate into taking action, there were only 36% of companies in Coimbatore that had a program or an initiative to take climate action. So which means the rest of the companies don't even have a program or an initiative of any level for taking climate action. And when that translated into commitments, there were only 12% of companies that were committed to net zero or had goals and targets related to taking climate action. And given that Shikhar sir had earlier told that the companies around Tirupur and Coimbatore are leading in terms of climate action, we can see the gap that's there in the SME sector in India in terms of taking this action, right? And on what could be done in order to mitigate things, I think there's this approach that I would try to propose, something again very similar to Mr. Tamal had said, is from a different perspective. At what you could do at a company level is there are three things. Needs to be a transformation or a transition that has to happen, and in order for that transformation to happen, there needs to be a mindset shift. There is a mindset, a skill set, and a tool set that you need for this transformation to happen. So if you want SME to take climate action, so it starts off with changing their mindset. They need to understand why taking climate action is important, and how that translate, or taking action on sustainability translate into a business value or an enterprise value for them. So building that awareness is more important, and giving them access to the knowledge as well as the best practices that they can actually do. So without this awareness, a lot of people talk about a skill set or using the tools and systems and all of that, but if you don't have the mindset, then that's very difficult to translate into action. So it starts off with building that awareness, as well as their decision makers being committed towards taking climate action, training them, having one of the board members who is trained on ESG and climate action will go a long way in terms of taking decisions, because ultimately it leads down to the decision maker or the top management making a decision. So that awareness building will be equal aspect, and as well as training their employees and all of that. And when it comes to developing skill set, capacity building plays a crucial role, and either they could train their employees, or they could hire people who will take care of the sustainability aspect, or in case if the resource is not available, then trying to look at to work with again the barrier, like exactly like Mr. Tamal said, to work with consultants is also being a barrier for SME, and that's where the cluster approach comes into play, having associations that they are associated with, and the association supporting them with the capacity building, having collaboration and a co-creation that's happening would be huge. And one example that I can say for associations taking action or an impact is in Tirupur, there's a zero waste discharge that happens with textile industries, and they have one of the world's very first effluent treatment plant that was built at a cluster level, and close to 12 crore liters of water is getting treated every day, and that's almost 96% of the effluent waste that's being reused and recycled. And all of that was because of the cluster approach that they took, and all the companies are associated to a particular association, and they're able to take this action, right? And I think again, a one-size-fit-all solution will not apply. What was happening in Tirupur may not be applicable in Rajasthan for the case, but each cluster has to take a cluster approach, and organizations like CII could probably promote that to happen. And in terms of then a tool set building is where you have systems and processes. When it comes to sustainability, I've definitely vouched for making it data driven. And like we had earlier discussions yesterday about greenwashing or green hushing, it's important that we make data driven and take a scientific approach on implementing the action steps to become more sustainable. And that is a area where we will need technology intervention to come in place. And there is already a lot of technology push that is happening in terms of developing the systems, as well as a demand pull that's happening. I think we are right now in a juncture where both of this are in unison, and we already have the, enough solutions in the market, and it's about companies being smart and implementing them. So I think to give quite a bit overview of our on-ground experience, I want to leave off this to say, I think any company, especially if they're an SME, a lot of people say, okay, why should I do it now, or I don't have cost and all of that. And I think it's about at a company level as a business strategy, the question is, do you want to be proactive or do you want to be reactive? There's no question that you're going to do all of these things at some point. If you're being proactive, you'll be a leader in the market, you will have a competitive edge, and you can lead the show. Or if you're being reactive, then you're going to do catch up with the market and all of that. So that's the question I want to leave the SMEs with, to say, can we become more proactive? Can we become the market leaders in terms of sustainability, so that it gives us a competitive edge when it comes to the market? So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hari. And I think this is one of the very important part also is that first, how do we bring SMEs on board? But once we have gained their confidence with the proper baselining that we are trying to achieve now, then the movement starts, because then we can roll it out one by one. And another part that we learned in the cluster with Coimbatore and Tirupur and other clusters also is, because these are all regional clusters, almost same type of product they are manufacturing. So if they see that some other company is doing these savings, they start doing it by themselves without knowing that there will be impact on climate. But they will start doing it because they know that this is a good practice to follow. Another important part over here is that in the cluster approach, which of course Dr. Sarkar has also mentioned, but in CII also we have learned it, that there is a lot of sort of sharing of the cost. So you can have a cluster, like we have a cluster of 20-25 companies. We just assemble them at one location, and they are very open, and all of those SMEs just come. There are local association offices which are there, so a lot of resources get sort of shared, and I think that brings the project cost quite down from the point of view of taking it to hotels and doing with some trainings and all. So you can do it in a very lean way, the complete project, and I think we can show them by doing the implementation in their companies. I think that's the best way. So I will now move on to Dr. Gupta and learn from him from the Hari is a young entrepreneur, but I think 30 years back you were also a young entrepreneur at that time. You thought of it, and you are a part of our cluster. But as an industry we found, so this is also beauty of SME, that we take them as a cluster, but within the cluster the industries are quite old, like 30 years, 32 years, 35 years. So that's also a learning, that what do they do, and they have been surviving for all these years. So there's something good they have been already doing. So we can't say that you are just starting from scratch or from ground zero. So we will like to have your experience, that what prompted you 32 years back, and now we are capturing the data, I should say. Yeah. So now we are saying that, okay, now having a bag made of cotton has a better or a lesser carbon footprint than the other form of packaging. So what do you, Dr. Gupta?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, CII, for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this very important summit. And if I tell about my business, I started this business 32 years before. And when I started this business, I thought everybody is doing business. But can I do any business which can give something to the environment or the society? And then I thought about making the eco-friendly carry bags. And these carry bags are alternate of single-use plastic bags. And if I tell you, single-use plastic bags are the major reason for the global warming we are talking about. because single-use plastic bags cannot be recycled, it cannot be reused, and it cannot be biodegradable. So I tell you the average lifespan of a single-use plastic is only 12 minutes. Means from you take that single bag plastic and you throw in the dustbin, it's only 12 minutes. And in the over globally, we talk about, we made more than 300 million tons of single-use plastic every year. And that cannot be recycled. So that is the major concern. And when we are talking about the cotton carry bags, cotton is made from 100% raw cotton. And raw cotton is, you know, like kapas. This is grown in the field. So the cotton is made from raw cotton. Cotton is made like in a spinning. It is made at cotton yarn, and yarn is made in the bags. So when the fabric is made, then this is a 100% natural product and it can be recycled 100%. That is the main thing. Another thing, because cotton is a very durable product, so it can be reused for many, many years. It's a very durable product. So when we are talking about circular economy, and we are talking about 3 R's, like reduce, reuse, and recycle. So that is the true thing about the cotton bags. We can use them for long time, we can recycle them, and this is a natural fabric, so we can biodegrade them also. So they have been very true alternate of single-use plastic bags, and we are making more than 50,000 bags in a day right now. We are the largest manufacturer of these bags. We make more than 10 million bags in a year. And if I think about my journey for last 32 years, then I think about the climate, then we have made more than 200 million cotton bags till now, which is the largest, I think, made by any single individual. So this way we are trying to have a climate action we are talking about, Mr. Shikhar, and this way we are working actually. Yeah.
Thank you, and I think all of you should give a clap to this, because I was just talking to Dr. Sarkar, and that in India one of the worst things is, and sorry I am saying about that we have never captured our results. Because this company 32 years back, more than what you said, 20 million or how many bags you have already sold. So if we see that much amount of 200 million bags, so that is the amount of carbon that has already been saved. And that is the amount of plastics.
We have saved trillions of single plastic bags from our planet.
So when we went into their cluster and my colleagues brought the data out, so we were doing only scope 1 and scope 2. Let's understand from your direct energy usage, indirect energy usage, and we realized that might be in some companies, and might be we take that this idea just came to me, that where we have examples like this, we should go into the product part also, that how much is the carbon which has been sort of throughout the journey. So we'll come to know that this is because now with the CBAM, which is the European Union Green Deal, and CBAM and all coming up, they are putting a carbon sort of a cess on the products that enter into Europe. And these are some of the products which are already which have a good carbon footprint, I should say, a very lower carbon footprint. So we should someday try to calculate this and show to the world that this is the amount of carbon we have already saved, which would have come into the atmosphere otherwise. So these are also the things which go unrecorded, and I seriously feel, and Dr. Sarkar, in your next question, I will come and ask you on this, that how do we sort of also have the Ministry of MSMEs come on board on this? Because this is where they have to present this data to the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, that this is what the carbon positive impact MSMEs can also bring. So we now move to Mr. Anup Notial. He also runs an SDC Foundation, and as I said, that in the state of Uttarakhand where you are, and you have already extensive experience in the issues related to environment, issues related to sustainable urbanization, tourism, and also the ecological impacts in the Himalayan region. What I liked about Mr. Notial was his passion on something related to the Dehradun smart city you started working with the littering part and how the sustainable urbanization has to work in. And from there he took the challenge that let me have this cluster and let me see that how we can bring them on board with the baseline for climate action. So it will take time, but I want you to share your experience, that how you see your sort of extensive experience in the Uttarakhand state, that how you are looking forward for this change happening, and because it's a hill state, what are certain initiatives that you have already taken and you feel that this project will also succeed over there. So over to you, Anupji.
So thank you so much for having me here today, and I come from Dehradun. So, your question, Shikharji, relates to what we are doing, but kindly allow me to speak for Uttarakhand and on behalf of Uttarakhand, because the faces that I see here, I see some overseas friends, but the vast majority of people are, of course, from here. And at an individual level, I deeply empathize with my state. And I assume that each one of you here has seen the massive amount of battering that has been received not only by Uttarakhand but also by our neighboring state of Himachal Pradesh. So battered by the monsoon of 2023, battered by landslides, battered by death, devastation, damages of unprecedented scale. So this, I think, of course, is a matter of immense concern, not only for the people of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, but of course for all of us. And one can go on, but if I were to move a little bit ahead and then come to land subsidence. So this is something which came in the public domain from, if I shall say, the saga of Joshimath, which began in the month of January of 2023. So, of course, Shikharji, I know that these issues are not related to what we are discussing, MSMEs and this and that, but, since you mentioned about a hill state, since you mentioned about Uttarakhand, I'm taking the liberty to talk about that. I will also share with friends here about the irony of the village of Raini. And for those of you who are keen to know more about this, please go ahead and Google. And the village of Raini is the village where Gaura Devi lived. I assume that many of you here in this room or hall would have heard about Gaura Devi, who she and band of other fearless women, when environment and sustainability were not buzzwords, they went and hugged trees and what became known worldwide as the Chipko Andolan or the Chipko movement. Now, the irony of the Raini village, which just celebrated 50 years of the Chipko anniversary, is that the people of that village themselves are forced to rehabilitate because the land under their feet is sinking. So there are, close to about 500 odd villages in Uttarakhand which require rehabilitation. So to answer and to come to your question, before I do that, the last thing which I wish to say is that sitting here in Delhi today, I wish to remember the ones who have suffered and offer my condolences to them. So now to come to the question, so we are also extremely grateful to CII, to Shikharji, and to your colleagues, that you have given us this fantastic opportunity to work in the climate space in a climate-sensitive Himalayan state like Uttarakhand. And as Shikharji mentioned, there is a cluster in the city of Haridwar. So broadly speaking, when we look at the state of Uttarakhand, I can simplify and say that there are about 7-8 clusters. So there is one in Haridwar, there's one in Roorkee, there's a place called Selakui, which is close to Dehradun. So when you go from Dehradun towards Himachal Pradesh, and then several other clusters. So we are working, we just recently, baby steps with this Haridwar cluster, so that is one. In terms of, again, your question, since you mentioned smart city, what else do we do? And here again, I wish to share something with you, which is again an initiative that, our organization is taking. And this is something personal, but again, it's a little bit of a story. And the genesis of the story, Shikharji, goes back to the 4th of October last year in 2022. And this, as far as I am concerned, is a very sad day or date again in the history of our state. Now you might wonder what happened on the 4th of October. So on the 4th of October 2022, in the morning, 29 people lost their lives in an avalanche when they were on a peak. So perhaps you've heard about something called NIM, the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering. 29 people, 29 young people. And just imagine, the cruel fate that they die in this unexpected avalanche. So this is what happened in the morning. And in the evening, a bus fell down in the district of Pauri and 34 people were lost. Now, this is what happened on 4th. And at a personal level, I was deeply touched like anybody else would be. So Shikharji, then one starts questioning that what can one do? And what we started doing from the month of October 2022 till today, we are documenting all major disasters and accidents in the state of Uttarakhand. And we do this on a regular basis. We do it on a monthly basis. And it's just, wordplay. That report is called UDAS. And UDAS, for the benefit of our overseas friends, means sadness. And UDAS in our case stands for Uttarakhand Disaster and Accident Synopsis. Now you might wonder, why do we do this documentation? In fact, as we speak, today itself, today morning, we have released the UDAS report for the month of July. And of course, I know that we are sitting at a distance. You can't see this report. This is a 13-page report for the month of July. And the whole purpose with this UDAS report is somehow to mainstream the issue of climate in the policy-making narrative of Uttarakhand. So these are, there are several such examples. I don't want to take a lot of time, but we work with a range of stakeholders, cutting across government, non-government, citizenry, people, this and that. We work with the Municipal Corporation of Dehradun, and there are many other, such examples, but I'll take a break here. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Anup. So you see that each one of them have something new to say us, a story behind each of these clusters. And I was also sort of touched when, Anupji, you mentioned that when it comes to Uttarakhand per se and Himachal, there is something in climate discussion we talk about adaptation. And I think when we see to SMEs and we talk about climate adaptation and resilience and vulnerability assessments and all, and I think these are very jargons to SME. And I think, Anupji, what you mentioned before we were coming into the panel was, and I think what his sensitivity provoked him was, he asked me, कि शिखर जी ये तो हम कर रहे हैं, but उत्तराखंड का एक स्टेट क्लाइमेट एक्शन प्लान बना हुआ है, उसमें तो कुछ लिखा नहीं है ऐसा, उसमें हम क्या कर सकते हैं? So then that's where the linkages of our clusters happened. And then all of a sudden I went back to Hari and said that, what's about Tamil Nadu? He said, no, sir, Tamil Nadu State Action Plan is updated of 2022. And we need to have a policy dialogue over there so that in the state action plan, we can start taking our learnings there. Because the state action plans are very much capturing the climate adaptation part. At every district level, they have the sort of weather forecasting which is there. So that MSMEs also need to learn about what we call as resilience, the resilient infrastructure and all. So I think this is very unique learning that all of us will be having. But because we have the restriction of time, I will pose one last question to Dr. Sarkar, which is that because from your experience, and you have handled, I don't know, more than 500 or 1,000 clusters and all. Okay. So with various sectors, you have handled this sort of clusters, that when the outcomes of these clusters come, like we are seeing our first report that we are going to release, but next year, how do we take it both to the state government and to the central government so that this work can have some policy impacts also? We need some insights on that how do we take them, because as of now, we have not brought them on board. So, but when we show to them, what do you think would be the right approach, taking them and showing them, and what could be from the policy advocacy point of view, we would like to have your suggestions on this?
My experience is that one experience is not good enough to generalize, but my experience is that ownership comes with participation actually. And so although there is a little bit of risk in terms of involving various types of ownerships in an activity, but even at the cost of that, organization like CII has the bandwidth definitely to involve such people, the people who matter, who will actually take the decisions right from the very beginning. The second way, of course, is to is that we are from the supply side. So if we involve the demand side in terms of taking the leadership in talking to the policy, the industry themselves going like CII representatives, industry representatives, going and telling the state government or the central government that we need this much, we need this thing to happen or that thing to happen. I think that is a very, I think these two things should be taken into consideration. I wanted to make another point which I was thinking, which is little considered with your second question, that you said that we are economically progressive, socially connected, environmentally sustainable world that is spiritually rooted. That is the vision of this organization. So it sounds very big actually. But in terms of data, I was just checking the data from 1900, for the last 8 decades, there has been only 10 occasions when the CO2 equivalent got a negative rate, and out of 80 years. And all these years were years of recessions. Okay, so that's a very important point. I mean, the highest being in the World War II, 1945, when it was minus 17%. And you'll be happy to know that the second one we all lived through, that is the COVID-19, when it was minus 5%. But immediately the next year, there was, after this 1945-46 things, it went up to 26%. And for this time, it went up from minus 5%, it went up to 12%. So, to this I relate to another question, is that I had recently to a cluster which is basically genes dying cluster, and very small farm, 10 employees. And they were said that they were utilizing 250,000 liters of water every day, because to make a jeans pant, I'm wearing one, I'm also a party to that. So it takes so many cycles of washing. So I told him that, I mean, how do you say that, I mean, how can you use so much of water to do this thing? So the question he asked me the question that, why do you wear it? So I was really stumped, and I feel that, of course, sustainable production that we are discussing right now is a very important thing. But I think that we have to, at some point of time, there has to be some sacrifice in terms of sustainable consumption. Otherwise, rate of growth of fund used for climate change is around 8%. And in the last year, it went up to $850 billion for that. And now the experts are saying that you need $2 billion annually to catch up. But CO2 equivalent is rising at 0.7% on an average for the last decade, and I think it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. To engage the audience, if there is any pressing question from anybody who would like to ask any of the clusters guy, yeah, if we can have mic, anybody is looking for the mic, or you are too nearby, you can just have. But can we have some quick questions, because we have another last 5 minutes with us to wrap up the session and also launch the report.
First of all, hello everyone. Thank you for such a great and inspiring session. We really enjoyed it. So I am Gaurav Dwivedi, CEO and founder of Ugreen Technology. So we basically work in climate change mitigation by capturing the carbon dioxide and converting it into value-added products. So we generally have the opportunity of interacting with MSMEs, and whenever we pitch our product or whenever we tell them that they could do the same thing in a more sustainable way, the major thing that the major challenge that they have is that most of the MSME work on a very niche margins. So cash reserves are not there. And in order to make their things more sustainable, or in order to change their way of production or working, they need funds. And that's where they are stuck. So I just wanted to ask you this thing, like to the whole panel, what they could do, or what could be a possible solution for that.
Fine. I got your point because we have restriction of time, but I will not run away from your question. That's also something we have in mind. That's about what we talk about climate finance. So we will definitely work on that part also. So we have that thing in mind. What you are saying, that you have a solution, but they are saying that there is a cost constraint to it. So definitely we have plan for it, and might be,
I want
yeah,
to have
please
a
add, and then you can
minute
also
note,
add.
finishing note.
Yeah.
About the CII, I'm seeing this glass bottle here.
Yeah.
Everywhere I can see the glass bottle, no the plastic bottle. And I must tell you, plastic bottles are very, very dangerous for us. It has been proven now that the microplastic, when the water is stored in the plastic bottle, microplastics are soluble in the water, and we are eating the microplastic in our body, which is a major cause for the cancer. It has been scientifically proven now. So please, I request you all, stop using the plastic bottles. And I thank you CII for taking this initiative for this summit. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So you can, you see there are some, the financing, sustainable financing is taking some baby steps in our country right now. But there is one organization, which is SIDBI, which has come out with few, products where they give sustainable financing at a very lucrative rate. So you can contact one Dr. R.K. Singh from there. I'll give you the contact later on. He's the person to be contacted to, if you have some unique product. So you can go and raise finance for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the last question, please?
I don't have a question.
Ah.
I'm from the CII Western region. I'm on
Okay.
the Sustainability Committee, and we were looking for advice like this. How can we help the SMEs? So
Great.
we are going to come to you.
Great, sir. Thank you. So may I request the audience to applause our MSME champions, I should say, and the work they are doing, at least that motivates them. And I will just request all of you to be a part of this report release that we are doing. Obviously, we have limited hard copies with us, but we will be uploading it on our website. And I will also request two of our lady members from the Madhya Pradesh cluster. We have Gayatri over here and Vasanti also to come on the stage. They also played a very important role, and I was not knowing that they are in the audience. I should have also listened to them also, and that would have been a great experience from Madhya Pradesh also. And sorry we missed it. Yeah, please join me.
I now request all our speakers to come forward for the launch of Climate Action Charter's Insight Report.
So that's the report, that's the report release, and this is capturing all the insights that they have done. Thank you. And I will just request all the panelists, just nobody here. Vasanthi, you and all, Gayatri, you can be also. Some picture, you can leave the report. It's just the pattern. Please, please come on. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude the session. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all the esteemed guests for the insightful discussion. Thank you all for your unwavering support and engagement. With this, we conclude the sessions scheduled in this hall. I now request all of you to please move to Sovereign Hall 1 for the closing plenary session on enabling collective action for sustainable future. Thank you.